Hey, Collide. Welcome in. How are you, boys?
What's up, Chuck?
Hey,
Mark,
Chuck.
how are you doing, boys?
I'm down here in Studio 2. You know, we have two podcast
Breaking out the fall wardrobe, Chuck.
Yeah, no, fair enough. It was the next thing up, you know, as you go through the closet, the next shirt.
You're either in Nantucket with me, Chuck, or you're in Houston air conditioning. And it's so cold, you're going to get it. Your nose is going to start running.
That's probably fair.
Before we get started, I have to shameless promotional plug by proxy for the latest Chuck Yates Needs a Job, or have you officially changed the name to Chuck Yates Got a Job or Has a Job?
I think so. I think we pushed it through the RSS feed as Chuck Yates Got a Job.
53-minute sit down with Colin talking about Collide, and I think, as I mentioned in a repost, that any energy pro looking to invest an hour in AI education could find no better place to spend it. I thought that was just an excellent conversation.
Oh, cool. Appreciate that. Yeah, that was
Dude,
that was
that's
kind
awesome.
of fun to do, and I think kind of the next 6 months of Chuck Got a Job is going to be a lot of AI stuff. I'm going to get John to sit down with me next week, and we're going to talk about data, and I'm going to get various folks out along the value chain of AI and what folks are doing. So I think that's going to be the focus.
So how'd the move-in go, Kirk?
I mean, it was great. I mean, they're like small colleges are great. They're so nice. Like they know that we have no idea what's going on. Everyone's super friendly. Fantastic. So, and Dartmouth is just,
I just did one of
Dartmouth's
those.
just really cool, by the way. I mean, if you haven't been there, they're really in the middle of nowhere. I have rededicated myself as an environmentalist because you're out in the woods and you just love it. Nature's everywhere and I love it. So,
And you did send around something you encountered. I think it was in Boston.
oh shit! Oh yeah, the eco warriors. The churches in Boston.
Church of the Covenant.
They're basically telling you that, hey, climate change is something that we fight here at the church. Like, my goodness. I guess you're giving up the idea that God created the earth and maybe humans are destroying it. But hey, we don't care. It's all emotional anyway.
Damn the environment, full speed ahead.
Something called a climate jubilee.
I'll post the we'll get the graphic up for the video. I'll send it to Jacob. So, fight the man. That's what we should be doing, right?
Absolutely. All right, Mark, are you kicking us off on EQT or?
Yeah, but I'm sure there's much more passionate and informed commentary from Kirk on this first one. But Maura Healey, who is the governor of Massachusetts, I guess since January, Kirk? Was when she was inaugurated, is in a wide-ranging interview. Of course, one of the topics was offshore wind, and this was after news that the administration is looking into the permits for New England Wind 1 and 2, I guess with the ultimate threat of cancellation. And now all of a sudden, these governors, particularly in the Northeast, preceded by Kathy Hochul of New York, are basically battling just the inevitable rise in consumer electric costs and diminishing reliability. And now it's, the Fed should be working with states, not against them, which I find to be deliciously ironic. If you look at what has transpired in New York recently in terms of political back and forth, now all of a sudden Governor Hochul is willing to consider natural gas pipelines, which is probably something that should have been done 10, 15 years ago.
I mean, it's beautiful irony because the Democrats have blocked every pipeline, LNG terminal, and nuclear plant for decades. And they're shocked now that reliable energy is getting expensive. It's It's ridiculous. And as someone that's paying 29 cents a kilowatt hour on Nantucket, I can tell you that her concern about electricity costs is about as genuine as a $20 Rolex on the Steamship Authority. I mean, they're politicians. What do you expect?
So are we actually going to see pipelines being built from Pennsylvania and West Virginia? What say you, now Massachusetts resident / native?
I think it's not in my damn backyard. I mean, is the attitude. It is actually real interesting because you're talking about the EQT announcement as well, right? That they're heading down to Texas. I mean, I think, in fact, with their deal with NextEra, it's corporate speak. I mean, because NextEra is saying they'll build it if the permitting gods smile upon us and no one files a lawsuit. So I think we've got how much gas do we have in the Northeast? Is it the most in the entire United States? Let's put it in comparison here.
I'm going to go with a really scientific term, a buttload.
A buttload.
Yeah.
I mean, we're sitting on the Marcellus Shale, literally swimming in cheap gas. But EQT has to diversify to Texas because the Atlantic coast has zero liquefaction capacity. I mean, it's amazing. It's kind of like having the best lobster trap on the East Coast and having to ship your catch to California to find someone with a pot big enough to cook them. That's what we're doing here.
And they still use heating oil in the Northeast.
Yeah.
Heating oil. How do you look yourself in the mirror and say, look, heating oil, I'm saving the environment? I mean, that stuff is trash to burn.
Well, at least the local churches are eco warriors, so maybe they'll figure it out.
There you go.
And on the EQT deal, they've signed an agreement with NextDecade for Rio Grande Project Train 5, which has not been FID'd yet, but we're talking about 1.5 MTPA, which I've always got to convert to BCF a day, which is it's a little under 0.2 BCF a day. So this is a 15 or 20 year agreement at Henry Hub pricing. And I think what, EQT, which obviously has its dominant producing assets on the East Coast, Mid-Atlantic area, is saying, and Toby's been saying this consistently for a number of years, is, his unleashing LNG mantra is we're not going to wait around for send out to play this game. We want our place in line in terms of being able to trade and supply LNG globally. It's an FOB type of pricing structure, so they're going to have the flexibility to control their arrangements and ultimately the destination of that LNG. But they want to be active players in the LNG market, despite the fact that geographically they're constrained, with which, as you point out, Kirk, no liquefaction capacity on the Atlantic side of the U.S. And as far as I can remember, there's been no discussions of conversions of, I think there are two facilities, regas facilities, Cove Point and Elba Island. If you remember way back in the early 2000s when we thought we were going to have to be importing a lot of LNG into the U.S., there were all these regas projects on the drawing boards, and all of a sudden,
for the East Coast,
huge pivot into kind of retrofitting those or recasting those as liquefaction and send out. So,
I mean, this is something that Trump could give the oil and gas business, is as part of this trade deal with India. Hey, you got to stop buying the Russian oil. Sorry, guys, we can't keep funding Putin. But oh, by the way, we don't want you building coal either. So we're going to give you billions of dollars to build natural gas infrastructure. And we're going to let Toby produce as much as he can, liquefy it, and send it to you all day long. I mean, this could be this could be a win for for an industry that needs a win these days.
I mean, it's interesting. Toby is I guess one of our favorite billionaires, but he could have been a multi-billionaire if the East Coast would have allowed him to move that gas. I mean, he's shipping this gas 1,500 miles down to Texas. I mean, it's really a triumph of politics over economics that we've regulated ourselves into shipping our own resources halfway across the country. Of course, but it's the Northeast. It's not going to change most likely. Interesting, but good for Toby for doing it. I think it's pretty wise on his part.
Yeah. Take the hostage out of the equation. I mean,
could we ultimately see a federal strategy unfold here in terms of what they're proposing to do on nuclear build out on federal lands? Is there enough naval or federally controlled port capacity in the on the Atlantic coast that we'll go ahead and sanction some projects? I don't know if there's space or capability there or port configuration works, but it just makes all the sense in the world to give that massive amount of Marcellus gas an outlet straight across the Atlantic to where it's much needed in Europe.
We have a very progressive Republican governor in Virginia, so I don't know if he's got control of his legislature to be able to do something, but Youngkin is sitting there in Virginia. That wouldn't be a bad LNG export facility.
I could see the Gulf Coast, whatever organization that they give money to, not being super supportive, because the Gulf Coast wants to get all the lion's share of processing capabilities. But it'd be interesting to see what happens, who's fighting. But yeah, Virginia would be great. I mean, from a Toby perspective, from a Northeast perspective, man, if you could just send gas into the Northeast and then send it offshore to sell it, it's good for them. I don't see the benefit necessarily to the Gulf Coast, but I see the benefit overall.
And because of the Jones Act, we wouldn't be able to ship LNG from Virginia to Massachusetts to the Everett receiving terminal. So we still have that.
I think
going
Milton
for
Friedman
us.
would call that regulatory capture.
What a mess. What a mess.
I'd really like to hear, some of the strategic thinking and all the deliberations that EQT has been through as they think about, this LNG strategy and, kind of what they've encountered or uncovered there as it relates to, getting some send out built closer to the Marcellus.
Mark, I'd be curious if we came back and did a little bit more math on what's the cost to ship the gas? Like what's the cost to pull gas out of the ground, but the fully deliverable cost of gas from the Marcellus to the Gulf Coast versus Texas gas or local gas. I wonder what the price differential is. And we know the LNG, you can get a premium to ship it into Europe as well as Asia. So clearly the math is going to work, but it'd be interesting for us to break it down and have that discussion.
Yeah, look, I'm having to buy gas down in Texas, send it out through Rio Grande, and just the mere difference in shipping distance from, the lower Texas Gulf Coast all the way to wherever it's going in Europe versus sending it straight out from the Atlantic coast. Huge advantage there.
Huge. I mean, shit. My flight from Boston to London was a morning, and I got there the same day. So there's no overnights, and in fact, it was just a mere 5-hour flight. I'm like, man, what do I do? It's actually further to fly from Boston to Los Angeles. I didn't know what to do with myself after 17 bottles of champagne. You can only you're stumbling off the airplane. So.
That's funny. All right. Well, Mark, why don't you just kick us on over into Europe and Norway since Kirk did that.
I'm sure both of you did the pre-read. It was another Doomberg piece called Drowning Swimmers. And they talk about really the history of not only Norway's, kind of power advantage and infrastructure, which is virtually all hydro. And so
God-given.
Norway did a couple of things very well. One was, after the discovery of oil in the North Sea, they made sure that the surplus revenues that Statoil, now Equinor, primarily was generating went into a sovereign wealth fund, which today is about $1.9 trillion. And that makes Norway one of the wealthiest countries in the world. So, kudos to them for not allowing these profligate spending administrations that we've seen in Germany and the UK, for example, to put them in a financial bind, one, and two, again, Norway's got the natural endowment of hydro. They've had very stable and cheap electricity until very recently. But the siphoning of all that started back in the late 70s when they laid the first undersea power cable to Denmark. And that since has been expanded from, I think, 700 megawatts to well over a gig, maybe 1.7 gigs. Compounding that issue over time, in 2008, they laid another line to the Netherlands, and then as recently as 2021, a dual line, one to Germany and one to the UK, that are 1.4 gigawatts each. And lo and behold, not surprisingly, what you've seen, look at the price curve for the historical kind of day forward, or however they measure it in southern Norway, the domestic electricity prices have been both rising and volatile. And so you've developed this dependency on Norway serving as a battery in a situation that is being aggravated by the energy policy decisions that UK, German, and other EU governments have made over the course of the last 10 to 15 years. And despite the fact that Norway is not a participant or is not a member of the EU itself, it is a member of the European Economic Area, which then gets them aligned with, the climate goals of the EU in principle and in practice. And so you've created this growing dependency problem, which is directly and negatively impacting the citizens of Norway, because Norway is just serving as a great big battery for a number of really struggling EU countries.
Yeah, I mean, having spent a lot of time in Norway, it's real interesting to me because they have all this hydro is just incredibly cheap energy, and it's, good for the environment. So it's fun. It's interesting that they created this sovereign wealth fund to navigate what I forget the author's name, so I apologize, but what he called the petro curse, and to try to regulate the economy from going to boom to bust. So instead of you throwing all that money into the economy, you siphon it off so that the economy doesn't go through these wild swings of hyperinflation. People get a lot of money, they spend it all. Inflation hits, economies crash, repeat. So good for them. But now you have an economy that is basically 100% electric vehicles. And they have this incredible resource that's offshore of the North Sea of oil and gas, but they're living off hydro. But the fact that they built these subsea cables they basically became Europe's offshore extension cord. But their domestic prices are spiking because, it's kind of like, as a surfer, we always give our people borrow my boards, but it's like basically giving every one of my surfboards when a good swell comes in. Like they have no power left for themselves. And there's nothing that destroys a relationship faster than Chuck Yates drinking too much. But what's even just as bad is when you're fighting over who pays the electricity bill. And when you're used to paying cheap bills and then someone comes around and says your bill's twice as much, that's really bad. And the fact that when you subsidize your neighbors' bad decisions, which is basically what Norway is doing, don't be surprised when they keep making them. So Germany, bad policy, UK, bad policy, can't speak for Denmark, but they're subsidizing bad decisions. It's just going to continue. They're just going to continue to make bad decisions.
Well, did we ever think we'd get to a point in history where you would sit the Germans down and say, dude, you're now Norway and France's bitch, And that's where we're headed with this. I mean, literally the most powerful economy in Europe is being decimated by faulty energy policy. And good God, I mean, what are the Germans going to do?
Well, let's bring it closer to home. I mean, it's basically the three of us, basically subsidizing California for their stupid policies. That's basically what's happening.
Yeah, no, that's exactly
We're not paying
right.
California's electricity bills, but if we had to, I'd be angry too. So I don't blame Norway for being upset.
Yeah.
Classic movie poll. Did we quit when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor?
Yeah, exactly.
So good.
Find that one, Jacob.
Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? Hell no!
German? Forget it, he's rolling.
He's rolling. That's such a good line. The one of my favorite stories about that is, Harold Ramis wrote that when he was at Harvard. And
really?
he was 21 and, wildly successful, right? And they asked him, they said, did you think it was going to be that successful? And he said, absolutely. I had no idea till later in life what a freak that was and what a wild occurrence it was. But I was like, sure, this is hysterical. It's going to be great. The rest in peace, Harold Ramis. I mean, if you go back and look at all the great Bill Murray movies, and I mean, Harold Ramis wrote all those. Ghostbusters, Stripes, Animal House, tick on down the list. So
that's awesome.
Anyway, do we have anything left on Run a Show? My phone.
Yes, we do.
What was that?
Another topic that's near and dear to Kirk's heart. In fact,
I'm enjoying just watching you guys this week. This is awesome.
So Shell announced earlier this week that it was not going to resume construction at its Rotterdam sustainable aviation fuels plant that it broke ground on, I think, back in 2022. I assume that project was active during your time there?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, SAF in general was an area even my team was all over. Is like people are paying a premium for sustainable aviation fuel. We know it costs 2, 3, 4, 5 times more to make it, but there was a market for it, albeit small. But you talk to all the airlines and there was demand, like if we can get sustainable aviation fuel. So there was a market, but you still needed subsidies to make it work. Now, as we've talked about, YL, smart guy as he is saying, no, we got to run this business on economics. And SAF, that Rotterdam facility did not make any sense without heavy subsidies. And I can tell you something that's even more funny, because you've got sort of like Shell, and then you've got the trading guys. And the traders, I mean, we need some Shell traders that have been around since Coral and some of the old days, but they don't give a fuck about anyone else at Shell. They don't. So what's funny is Shell traded 10 billion liters of biofuels in 2024. That's 10 times their own production, proving it's better to be the middleman than the manufacturer. So the traders know exactly like where to make money, and they're like, we'll trade this shit because we're one of the biggest traders of anything energy. But when it comes to actually making it and trying to make money as a manufacturing, it just doesn't make any sense. And so that's why that project didn't reach its full potential.
Well, and I think that dovetails, whether they're related or not. I tend to think that they are somewhat. There was a rumor that popped up this week that Exxon is looking to exit via sale of its European petchem assets. Not been confirmed by the company, but it was all over the wire this week, and
so maybe Shell capital is being allocated over to a better project. That's the one thing I do love about Shell is if I have a project, I'm fighting against everyone else in the company to get it funded, not just my one organization, but they're going to look at every project on its own merit. So good for them. I like how the company is run from that perspective. So maybe Shell's going to be in the market for that. Is that what you're saying, Mark?
Well, they're not going to be in the market for Exxon's petchem. You wouldn't think. You don't want to increase your capital intensity on downstream and chemicals in the European theater, right? I love the unnamed sources who were not authorized to speak on the discussions, as always. I think it was an FT article originally, citing a couple of sources, and it'll be really interesting, like the California refinery shutdowns or mothballing that are imminent, is to see whether ultimately there are any actual buyers for these assets, because the macro or the kind of external stuff makes you think twice about building and operating petchem in anywhere in Europe. Tariffs was kind of a main theme as to motivations to sell, but I think fundamentally, if you look at the other factor that was cited, is that there's cheaper Asian supply and a lot of these key petchem components that's coming quickly, and so I think that's just a structural reality for the European market that's compounded by the other things that we've been talking about, particularly as it relates to Norway and its dilemma with power, et cetera, is that it's just really, really hard to tolerate the risk calculus around building fixed assets that are under a lot of pressure from a regulatory and political standpoint in Europe right now, and be able to compete globally on a returns basis.
So I'll give a shout out to a friend of the program, Brad Olson, who's been on Chuck Job a few times over at Recurrent. He says, everybody keeps talking about LNG operators and fighting for this really small LNG market in Europe. He said the big fight is, what about their massive refining market? The export opportunity for replacing EU refineries is way bigger than replacing Russian gas. So, a lot to be said for that.
I thought they were all going to be driving BYD sports cars.
So let's put this in perspective. So going back to sustainable aviation fuel, it's economically unfeasible. So you're starting to see these non-sovereign energy companies starting to play the economics game, which 10 years ago, of course, when this SAF project got greenlit, originally it was during the regime of Save the Planet. Now it's under the regime of economics runs. I mean, it kind of is like trying to run a Nantucket restaurant on locally sourced, organic, gluten-free lobster rolls for $75. I mean, technically possible, but you'll go bankrupt faster than a day tripper's daily sunscreen budget. It just doesn't make sense. And speaking of, going back to Norway, I was served on a board with an executive from Norsk Hydro, and if you know Norsk Hydro, they're a big. Actually, they run a big aluminum smelting business, which most of their smelters are in Norway because of the cheap, almost free energy. Because aluminum smelters are so energy intensive. Now, the fact that those energy prices are going up hurts their business in a massive way. So they're in oil and gas to some degree, but their primary business is utilities, running some of these hydro facilities, as well as some of the downstream impacts, like running aluminum smelters as well. So Norway is going to be in an interesting hurt now that they're giving up their cheap, free, economically affordable energy to other people. So Europe's, once again, you're seeing some dumb impacts of Europe. So Norway, they're going to have to figure out what to do. And you're seeing some smart impacts, such as Shell shutting down SAF, which was, probably a little bit late on the decision, but glad they did it. Chuck, thoughts?
None. Just sure.
But we can laugh from the United States, but we've got EQT trying to, they're going to have to ship our cheap gas all the way to another side of the country just to process it.
The owner of our energy policy in various pockets, as well as the Jones Act. I mean, we can't talk much, Thou shalt not throw a stone if thine live in glass houses. So, well, cool. Anybody got anything fun coming up? Because I do. Not this weekend, but next weekend. Telluride Blues and Brews Festival. Got
nice.
Lucas Nelson is headlining Saturday night. Sunday night, the Black Crows. And I've always found the brothers' animosity in the Black Crows either leads to magic or just a shit show. So I'll report back on which one it is.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm doing a little cast and blast this weekend. More casting than blasting, but as I mentioned before we got started, it wasn't a keeper, but I did land an 8-spot redfish yesterday down here on the Texas Gulf Coast, but going to go see if there are any white wing flying this afternoon, because we're in the south zone where I am currently, and you're limited. The rest of the state above the south zone opens September 1st, but we get a bit of an early start with white wing, but it's not looking too promising out there right now.
That's awesome, Mark. What is the overall forecast this year
For
white wing?
I don't know. I think some of the other areas are pretty good, but I don't know how some of these heavy rain events that have happened on the Gulf Coast here recently have affected it. Haven't shot in a couple of years, but was itching to do so. It just doesn't look like the conditions are going to cooperate.
Safest place for an animal is about 10 feet in front of me when I have a shotgun. I can't.
Well, I'm here in the no gun zone. There is a story locally on Nantucket, because we have a huge population of illegal immigrants, by the way, because we're one of these, and they don't have affordable food because they live on the most expensive island in the United States. So you go do that math. But we have a bunch of deer that keep running in front of cars at night because we have an overpopulation. So someone's like, hey, what if we feed everybody by allowing more people to hunt on the island? So I'm like, well, hand up, let's go.
Send in the Cajun army.
That's right. We could,
sausage for everybody.
Sausage for everybody.
All right,
hey guys,
boys.
Miss y'all.
Miss
Talk
you
soon.
too.
Good seeing you, man.
Good seeing you.
Yeah, likewise. Hey, send pictures of the fish and the birds.
Absolutely.
After you watch this, watch the latest Chuck Yates Needs a Job.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, Colin did a nice job on that one. So, all right, boys.
Peace
we'll
out,
see you
boys.
later.
Take care. Have a good weekend.